Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide Jason. When we think about spellcasters and warriors, we treat them as separate things, but they do share a lot of similarities. So I want to ask, what should spellcasters learn from warriors? In most fantasy series, spellcasters and warriors fight side by side, and are different, but will learn from each other. So what sort of things could spellcasters take from warriors to improve their survivability? It seems fitting to begin with the bare-knuckle brawlers. Tell me, do we have any boxing fans in the audience? Now, I know it looks like boxers are all just brawn, throwing punch after punch, in an attempt to knock what little brains out of each other's heads. But there is strategy and technique being applied. There are several major strategies with their own subsets. Kind of like the bending in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Kind of like sand and metal bending being versions of earth bending. Now, I've seen different names used over the years, so you might hear some alternative titles. The big ones are the infighters, which include swarming fighters, the outfighters, which include counterpunchers, and lastly, the sluggers. There is the boxer puncher and the complete fighters, but those are hybrids of the others. Let's start with the infighters. They like to get in close and trade blows. Mind you, this means that they are going to get hit too. They will often focus on speed in an attempt to blitz down their opponent. In concept, this would be a spellcaster who spams fast, quick spells in an attempt to bring down their foe. Now, these spells could get to be powerful if the cast time is short. Potentially, their mana cost would rise to balance it. These are the kind of mages that will end up getting close so they can get their spells off faster. The outfighters like to keep their distance and wait for an opening. Ideally, they prefer to have greater reach and good footwork. When an opponent attacks, they evade and then attempt to deliver a powerful blow to drop a foe. This requires patience and cunning to work effectively. You'll need to pick up patterns. In concept, this is how most people defeat a Dark Souls style boss. As a mage, this would be the one who uses a defensive spell to stop their foe's attacks and then capitalizes on the opening. They will prefer to attack from range and snipe foes. And lastly, we got the sluggers. Their motto is raw power. They will want to end a fight quickly and with excessive force. One punch. If there isn't a way, they will make their way. This could be said to be a glass cannon of sorts. Well, a bit tougher than glass, but same idea. They only need one punch, and it will take a couple to land it. Unfortunately, these attacks are heavily telegraphed. In gaming concepts, this would be the Azure Comet build from Elden Ring. Now, there is a little theory that surrounds the three fighting styles. The sluggers are easy to predict, which makes them the perfect prey for the outfighters. Yet outfighters need an opening, and infighters won't let them have it. They'll get into their reach and just lay into them. But all those attacks of the infighter won't deter that big hit from our slugger. Yeah, there's actually an application to rock, paper, scissors, and we can apply this to our spellcasters. Counterspell and warding spell builds will likely fall into the outfighter, but they may struggle when fighting those who spam quick and easy spells. And if they go for a big blasting spell, barrier up, and then counter. Of course, all of this is based on the idea that spells should work the same way as a fighter. And I haven't touched on the hybrid styles yet. These adaptations won't lock you into one fighting style, and provides you the ability to adapt. So which would be the best combination? Well, the boxer puncher is basically the slugger mixed with an outfighter, and that would be my recommendation. Focus on developing a strong defense, and then wait for an opening to unleash your ultimate spell. But this does have an interesting outcome. What happens if a boxer puncher fights a boxer puncher? One attacks, and the other dodges, so that they can attack, and then be dodged. Back and forth, they will go and never land a decisive blow. This will result in a battle of attrition until one gets fatigued and makes a mistake, or at least until one changes their attack style. And if they are trying to wall in, it might be best to switch to a flurry of quick attacks. Of course, there is an issue with it. I am comparing defensive spells to dodging and blocking. But what if a defensive spell is more like a shield? But I'll get to that in a bit. First, I want to voice my issue I have with grappling. The goal is to pin and incapacitate your foe so that they can't fight back. This requires you to grab your foe, and using joint locks and leverage, you force your foe to submit. This requires skill, but has two issues. Your foe could counterattack. When I grab you with one hand, that hand can't punch or block. Basically, I gave myself a handicap unless I can reposition myself or disable your limb. That means a higher risk of injury if you mess up. This could be viewed as forms of crowd control, or ones that require continuous focus. Spells which limit your ability to fight back. Lastly is the biggest issue I have with grabs. They aren't as useful against multiple foes. How many people could you grapple with? Well, maybe a master could pull 2, but anyone else? Not a chance. That means spells which limit your abilities might be disastrous if facing multiple foes. Now you need to be more careful. Honestly, just going for one big old slugging attack or infighting would be the best option, I would say. Now when fighting multiple foes, there is a strategy. Position yourself so that your foes get in each other's way. Get them down to a single file, or find a battleground which will limit them. But what if they use weapons? You put a big stick in someone's hands, and they will easily beat someone without a big stick. But if you give them a shield, they can block the stick. I can't use an exact one-to-one here, but there are a few general ideas. What is better, a spear or a sword? And this is very subjective and situational. But isn't range important? Well, yes, and a bow is better than a sword. So by the same logic, spellcasters should elect to use spells that focus on long-range attacks. However, there is an advantage of a sword over a spear, and that is versatility. A spear does its best damage with a thrust. Yes, swords can thrust, but they can also slice, and they have more ability to defend. So would a more versatile spell be better than a direct attack spell? Well, of course, the only answer I could give you in good faith would be that it will depend on the situation. After that, we could look at some strategies warriors use. Let's start with a shield wall. Now, this will require a party to pull off, most likely, but it is worth talking about. After all, what adventurer doesn't have a party? A shield wall involves layering multiple shields to cover the gaps. Now, you could then add spears, having them pass between them to add in an offensive option. So, can we do this with magic? In concept, we will need several of our Outfighter mages casting barriers, and then hiding Slugger mages behind them. We can let them charge and cast their spells safely. Yet we have an issue. Unlike spears, spells are likely to be more volatile, and the warding spells will get in the way, which means a few things. Either they will need to drop their defensive spells for the attack spell to go off, make them one-way barriers, or be able to move. Each has complications. If they need to drop their defensive spells to attack, that opens them up to counterattacks. Perfect for our Outfighter mages, isn't it? If they had been waiting too, you could quickly end up with the old beam struggle battle. Of course, that can be epic in a show, but not a good thing in a real life or death fight. You don't want to leave things up to chance. Basically, this turns into grappling. Or is it more of a tug-of-war? The next option was the one-way barrier spells, and I prefer this method, assuming that your foes can't reverse the spell. This has the least chance of it blowing up in your face. The last option I mentioned was moving your shield spells out of the way. And there was one major issue. Have you tried getting a dozen people to coordinate a simple task? Well, it sucks. Don't tell me that it doesn't. We all know it does. Now try doing that in a chaotic battle. I don't care how much you practice. Sooner or later, someone is going to mess it up. And that big old destruction spell is going to hit the back of the shield and blow you all up. Oh, while moving, you would also open yourself up to the Outfighter mages to attack again. Not a great situation. But we could also switch to an alternative strategy, and that is the old-fashioned archer volley. Set up a line of mages to launch a spell, and then while they are casting again, another line fires. And you can alternate. If you are willing to add in the extra difficulty, you can have the rows retreat. The last one brings up the issue of organizing and coordinating movements, but it is possible. And there is less danger of a mess up this way. And you'll need to work on the timing of the casting. All of this tells me that mages will need to work on their cooperative operations a fair bit. Maybe more than warriors. What do you think, adventurers? What else could spellcasters take from their sword-wielding brutish allies? I'm sure that there are a few things which I did miss. Definitely something was the cavalry I missed. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.